Good evening. My name is Jessica Brinkley, and I'm a Senior Program Policy Specialist with the National Education Association's ESP Quality Department. And I, along with my colleague, Dorothy Vu, who is a Senior Communications Specialist in the ESP Quality Department, will be serving as your moderators for this evening's webinar. We would like to welcome you to the Supporting ESPs and Canceling Student Debt session. This presentation is brought to you by NEA's ESP Quality Department, the NEA's Office of General Counsel, and one of our partners, Savvy. The ESP Quality Department represents and advocates for the nearly 500,000 NEA education support professional members, also referred to as ESP. ESPs serve as fellow educators in the school community and play an important role in supporting the whole student. Our strategic focus is to elevate ESP careers by developing, implementing, and promoting best practices, policies, and professional supports that equip ESP with the knowledge and skills to become empowered leaders, accomplished professionals, and members of a high-quality workforce prepared to meet the needs of the whole student. At this time, I would like to turn things over to one of our presenters tonight, Mr. Eric Harrington, and he is going to get us started. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. I am super excited to be here. We have a great news to share, and it's exciting to be able to do it with my partner, Lindsay, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. Go ahead and give me the next slide. So here's what we're going to talk about. We have a recent news from the Department of Education about an overhaul of the public service loan forgiveness program. And this overhaul is going to mean that thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of educators, and you may be one of them, who had previously been ineligible for loan forgiveness are going to be eligible this year. You're gonna have to take some steps, many of you, in order to take advantage of this overhaul and this forgiveness. And we're gonna talk tonight both about the overhaul, but also what you have to do to take advantage of it. Okay, so I'm Eric Harrington. I'm a senior counsel in NEA's Office of General Counsel, and I lead NEA's cross-center team that has been working on really shaking up this student debt system and seeking broad-based reforms, including broad-based cancellation and the reforms that we were able to successfully achieve that we'll talk about tonight. My partner you can see in the box here is Lindsay Clark, is a dear friend at this point. We've done so many of these together. We've done these in boxes though, Lindsay. We should get a drinks or something someday. We don't even know what each other looks like in 3 dimensions, but we know each other well. Lindsay is the Director of External Affairs, and our partner Savvy Solutions, who provides individualized student debt support for every single NEA member. And we're going to talk about that tonight as well. Okay, let me first start with a poll. Let me take this back and take us back to the presenters. And I want to hear from you. I want to get a sense of your student debt picture with some questions. If we could have the poll questions pop up. Okay, so my first question for you is, do you have federal student loans? I'm guessing that you do, or someone you care about does, and that's why you're joining us tonight. So go ahead and answer that question. And my second question is, have you heard about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program? And my third question, I got lots of yeses here. Have you worked in public education for 10 years or more? So we'll give you a minute-ish, and go ahead and do your 3 clicks, and we'll see what the results look like. All right, I'm imagining that a lot of you are going to be here because you have student loans. So only about 6 in 10 of you have heard about public service loan forgiveness. And 2/3 of you have worked in public education for 10 years or more. We have some terrific news. If you're someone who has federal student loans and you've worked in public education for 10 years or more, there's a very good chance that you could be eligible for forgiveness under the overhauls that we're going to talk about tonight. All right, so first, if you have student debt, and it looks like 8 or 9 out of 10 of you do, you're not alone. It's not an accident, not something you did. What we know well, based on research and obviously our own lived experiences, is that student debt is a structural issue that has been created because of the high cost of education, and because of the student loan industry itself, trapping many of us in debt. And you can see this is now a very common thing for ESPs in particular to have student debt. Almost half of all ESPs do today. Okay, as I mentioned, we've been fighting like heck to fix this very broken system. And so just in the last couple of years, first we fought for a change of leadership in the Department of Education and required getting a different president. We knew that the previous Secretary of Education was never going to be on the side of student loan borrowers. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a Secretary of Education who would actually listen to student loan borrowers. Just this year, we led a coalition of over 200 organizations representing tens of millions of public service workers, urging public service loan forgiveness reform. And we're going to talk about what those mean tonight. NEA and NEA members specifically pressured the Department of Education to hear from educators. They created forums to hear the student debt stories of educators. You may be one of the people, and thank you if you are, who submitted comments to the Department of Education and shared your student debt story. Many of them were heartfelt and they were heard, and the reforms that we're going to talk about tonight occurred because of so many short stories that were shared. In fact, nearly 50,000 personalized messages just from NEA members in the last several months. Over the last few years, almost 170,000 messages went to various departments in the government. And we kept the public service loan forgiveness news in the months. So the next slides really show this. Here is NEA members meeting in the yellow box in the middle. You may recognize as Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona. He met with NEA members, educators, who told the story of their student debt story and the need for student debt cancellation and for public service loan forgiveness overhaul. We kept the problems of public service loan forgiveness in the news for months, creating public awareness and pressure on a program that was designed to forgive the debt for educators who'd served their communities for 10 years or more, but until recently had absolutely failed them. This is a 60-minute story. You might have seen the story that was out just about a month ago. And as I said, you and maybe some of you, but many NEA members just bombarded Congress and the Department of Education with personal stories urging broad-based cancellation and reform. And one, I wanted to share one compelling education support professional who shared his story. I didn't have his permission to use his name, so that's why I took his name off. But I'm sure he's actually quite proud of his eloquent statement. They went directly to the secretary, and his voice was heard about the need to fix the public service loan forgiveness program. Okay, so here's the result. We're kind of bearing the lead a little bit. I want to kind of get right to what this overhaul means for you. Over the coming weeks, 22,000 public service workers, and you may be one of them, will get imminent loan forgiveness, and these averages about $80,000. These should be automatic, but they may take a few weeks. And I'm going to tell you what you need to do to figure out which category you fit in as well. Over the coming weeks, another big chunk of workers are going to become eligible for forgiveness, but they're going to have to do something. And again, we'll talk about in some detail what you have to do. And then over this year, over 500,000 workers are automatically going to see additional credits for public service loan forgiveness. And these should be automatic, but they'll take a couple of weeks. And then many more, that 40% of you who have never heard about public service loan forgiveness, you're not even counted in this. You can still apply for public service loan forgiveness, but these numbers include people who've already kind of been in the program, but it's not too late. You can still get in the program to get public service loan forgiveness. So these kind of eye-popping numbers for the number of public service workers who are going to get forgiveness in the next year or get additional years toward public service, they don't count the 40% of you who have not heard of public service loan forgiveness yet and have not applied to the program. Okay, so what is public service loan forgiveness? And, the program was passed in 2007, And it was designed a very simple idea. And that was, if you provide public service to your community for 10 years and you pay your student loans, the federal government will forgive your federal student loans after those 10 years. It's a really simple, powerful idea, simple deal. Many of you probably may have relied on it, but the program has some technical requirements. And these technical requirements have created problems over the years. So the first technical, please back up. The first technical requirement is that you had to have the right kind of loan, and your loans had to be direct loans. Second, you had to have the right servicer. You had to have your loan serviced by Fel Loans. Third, you had to be in the right repayment plan. You had to be an income-driven repayment plan. Payments made in other repayment plans didn't count. You had to work full-time for the right kind of employer. Almost all public, really all full-time workers who work in public education are gonna be working for the right kind of employer, but you have to fill out paperwork to certify it. And then finally, you have to make 120 on-time payments. They don't have to be consecutive. So then the next slide, some of these technicalities have really tripped people up. Many were in the wrong loan. Many never even heard of public service loan forgiveness. Many were in the so-called wrong payment, but were never told. Many had their employment certification applications denied, even though they work for a public school, just because of their sort of pedantic paperwork errors. And many had marginally late payments or lost payments that were not credited. So a late payment of a few days would not be credited. So again, it's really, you have to work in public service and have 120 payments is kind of the core requirement for forgiveness under the public service loan forgiveness program. Now, this overhaul has fixed a lot of the problems. The overhaul that was announced by the Department of Education just a couple of weeks ago. Now, it doesn't matter what kind of federal loan you have. So if you have applied for public service loan forgiveness in the past, and you have been denied because you had a Fel loan or a Perkins loan, you are now eligible for public service loan forgiveness. You still have to have the quote right servicer. Your loans have to be serviced by Fel Loan, but when you fill out employment certification forms, you get pushed to them anyway. Now, various types of payment plans will count. You can have payments that are not just for income-driven repayment plans, but other repayment plans, and those will count towards your 120 payments. You still have to work for the right kind of employer, so that's going to be a hurdle, but it's not a substantive hurdle. Almost all of you, I'm sure, work for the right kind of employer, but you just have to fill out the paperwork to show that you work for the right kind of employer. And you still have to make 120 payments, but now late payments and payments that were slightly off will now count. So the result now, here's the bottom line. If you're an educator and you've made 120 payments on your student loans while working for a certified employer, which means you've worked in public service for 10 years and you've made 120 payments, you're likely eligible for forgiveness. And this is total forgiveness of your federal loans. And now it does not matter what kind of loan you had. It doesn't matter if you have been denied forgiveness in the past. And it doesn't matter if some of your payments were late or not previously credited. The big catch is that this is a 1-year waiver, a year and 3 days, October 28th. You must apply for this waiver of the public service loan forgiveness by October 31st, 2022. So let me reiterate. If you have federal student loans and you are an ESP or a teacher or any educator in a public school, and that you've worked there for 10 years and you've made 120 payments on your federal student loans, you are quite likely, you're quite likely to be eligible for some kind of forgiveness. And again, if you're eligible for public service loan forgiveness, it will wipe out all of your federal student debt, not private debt, but federal student debt. And if you've been tripped up in the past by technicalities, if you've applied, you talked to servicers, any news that you've heard about public service loan forgiveness before 2 weeks ago is old news. This program is completely revamped, but it's only a 1-year revamping. Okay, so here's the really straightforward thing of what do you have to do to figure out if you're eligible and to take advantage of it. Okay, so first you should go to studentaid.gov/PSLF. There you can log in with your federal student aid ID. If you don't have one, you need to create one, and you should. And make sure your contact information is correct, because you may be someone, maybe you've already applied for public service loan forgiveness and you were denied because you were in the wrong loan or some of your payments didn't count. You very well may be someone that the Department of Education is going to forgive your debt just on, they're going to do it on their own, but they need updated contact information to reach out to you. If you have a direct federal loan and you have made 120 payments and you've applied for PSLF, public service loan forgiveness, but were previously denied because of wrong loan or late payments or something, you should actually receive automatic forgiveness from the Department of Education. We know notices are already starting to go out to people. And we know people who've already received them saying that their debt is going to be canceled. If you have a direct federal loan and you've made 120 payments and you have not applied for public service loan forgiveness, you've never filled out an employment certification form, you have never actually applied for forgiveness, you need to apply for PSLF right away. And you can do that on the studentaid.gov/PSLF website. There's another way it's going to be more easy, and that's what Lindsay's here to talk about. Okay, and if you have a Fel or Perkins loan, you need to consolidate into a direct loan, then apply for public service loan forgiveness. This part, if you have a Fel or Perkins loan, this can be really tricky, and you're probably really going to want to get some help. And we got help. Help is on the way. I'm going to get to that next. But I do want to just lay out what, if you are a do-it-yourselfer, these are the steps that you'd have to do if you're a do-it-yourselfer. If you're like 99.9% of you, and you're utterly confused about much of what I've just said, don't worry, it's not you. The student loan system and student loans are too complicated. They're hyper complicated. Even this reform and overhaul, while it can provide really vital forgiveness for people, it's still too complicated. But the good news, and if you can go to the next slide, is that no, a few back, please, is that we've got help here. So you can use that, you can do this yourself, you the do-it-yourself version, and you can go to studentaid.gov/PSLF. Or you can go to NEAMB, which is for NEAmemberbenefits.com/savvy. And NEA member benefits, as part of your dues, provides free individualized debt support for every single NEA member for at least 1 year. We're working on making it free for longer, but if you're going to be applying for forgiveness under this program, you don't need more than a year. So you can go to neamb.com/savvy. Lindsay is from Savvy, and she is going to talk about how Savvy can help you navigate this process. If you have any trouble accessing Savvy, you have to like log in your NEA login. You can call NEA member benefits at that phone number, and they can walk you through and get you logged in. So to summarize this, if you have worked for 10 years or more and you have federal student loans, please, 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 please take advantage of this. You have a real shot of getting all your federal student debt wiped out. You can be a do-it-yourselfer and do it at studentaid.gov/PSLF. But I highly encourage you to take advantage of the free member service from Savvy. And Lindsay's going to talk to you about it in a minute. They have helped so many NEA members. Lindsay herself personally has helped many NEA members. They are absolutely dogged for our members. And nobody on planet Earth is more excited than Lindsay about wiping out people's student loan debt. And everyone every NEA member that goes to log on Savvy, and if you got a shot of forgiveness, they are going to work to get it for you. So I highly encourage you to use that. And if I can have the next slide, I think this is where I turn it over to Lindsay. Yeah. So with that introduction and that urging of using our partners at Savvy to help you navigate and figure out whether you are eligible for this forgiveness, I turn it over to my friend, Lindsay Clark, who can walk you through what the services that Savvy provides to NEA members.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. It's great to be with you this evening. So we've been working very closely with Eric and his team at NEA and the team at Member Benefits for the past couple of years to help members better navigate and understand their debt and eventually cross that forgiveness finish line. And we're really excited now to be able to help borrowers who are going to be eligible under this program for immediate forgiveness, automatic total forgiveness, those that might have been rejected earlier. That pool of eligibility has opened up entirely. And as Eric mentioned, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed and confused about this. The public service loan forgiveness program was confusing to begin with. And so, this new expansion, this waiver, sometimes creates more questions than answers. And that's exactly why we built the tool and service that we did to be able to help you as a borrower basically get from end to end and do all of the administrative and clerical paperwork for you so that you didn't have to think about it and be overwhelmed. And you could know that someone was looking out for you and you were going to be assured of reaching that finish line. So if we go to the next slide, I'm just going to touch a little bit on who we are here at Savvy. I think it's important because there are a lot of scam companies out there, and we really take our work very seriously and passionately in service of borrowers. So we're a social impact tech startup based in Washington, D.C. We were founded by policy experts and advocates who have been working on behalf of borrowers for over a decade and realized how difficult it was to navigate these programs, repayment and forgiveness. And so they developed a technology platform to help borrowers, not only better manage and understand their debt, but actually get enrolled in these programs and then monitor that enrollment to ensure they reach the desired outcome and actually cross that finish line. I think so many borrowers might understand what they could be eligible for, but when it comes down to the paperwork and all the different touch points along the way, it's really easy to just drop off. I'm a student loan borrower myself. I have a little over $200,000 in student loan debt, and I will do anything to procrastinate on my debt. Out of sight, out of mind. I'd prefer not to think about it. So that's where Savvy comes in. And on this next slide, I sort of outline what we provide to be able to take on all of that for you. So it's our full-time job to manage that debt and make sure you're successful. You all have full-time jobs. You don't need to worry about that. So what does this Student Debt Navigator do? Well, first and foremost, it's going to provide you with sort of the eligibility around this new PSLF expansion waiver. So we're going to be able to look under the hood of your situation and tell you and determine what you are eligible for, and then help you to take the necessary next steps, if there are any, to get on the right track and receive that forgiveness. So depending upon where you are and what you might be eligible for, some borrowers might be in that lucky case where they're going to be eligible to receive automatic forgiveness. They won't have to do anything, but many borrowers are going to have to take some type of action, whether it be consolidation or submitting an employment certification form. And so Savvy will be able to identify that for you and then help you to take that and even submit it on your behalf. So you don't have to worry about figuring out what you might be eligible for, what you need to do next. We do that all for you. And then when we submit these applications, we monitor them very, very closely to make sure that they are being processed accordingly. I'm sure many of you, if you've had experience with these programs before, know how difficult and tricky it can be to work with your servicer. And so our goal is really to reduce that friction between you and your servicer and make sure they are held accountable and that those applications are processed quickly and accurately. And that way you are getting closer to that forgiveness that you deserve. And then last but not least, and this might be one of the most compelling aspects of the tool and the service, is you're able to access personalized one-on-one support with our team of student loan experts. So that's the ability to talk on the phone with someone like me, who is an expert around student loans, but is able to sort of walk you through your situation, what that outcome is going to look like in that timeline, and help you to sort of understand your options, and then sort of decide what that best outcome is and get you on the right track. So, someone who's got your best interests at heart and is going to be in your corner to make sure that you're going to be successful. Now, the good news on this next slide, as Eric had mentioned, this service, this full premium service where we're not only going to be able to determine your eligibility, but then get you enrolled and on the right track and take on all of that administrative burden. This is completely free for your first year for all NEA members, thanks to the NEA Members Insurance Trust. So as Eric mentioned, we're hoping it can be free forever, but hopefully for many of you, you won't need it for more than a year. You're going to be able to take advantage of this and hopefully gain forgiveness as soon as possible. So on this next slide, I'm going to show you how to get started with the Student Debt Navigator. You can go to the link on the screen below that you see there. I think I'm going to put it in the chat as well. It's pretty long, app by dot. Let's see, I'll put it in the chat instead of reading it out loud. But that's basically where you can register right off the bat and enter into the Savvy tool and get started. And on this next slide, I'm sort of going to walk you through what that process looks like. So when you register for that free account, you'll see your dashboard. And this is sort of like mission control for everything Savvy. This is where we monitor and track your applications, show you your eligibility. You're going to be able to see things like important policy announcements on that sidebar. But this really gives you visibility into what's going on. And it's a way for us to be transparent with you about the applications that we're submitting and everything like that. So it really is sort of how you can monitor and see how close you are to forgiveness. On this next slide, great. So this is a look at your loan overview part of the tool. And this is where we are able to sort of show you based on the loans that you've synced, and I'm going to get to that in a second, how close you are to forgiveness, how those loans break down. All of those details are sort of summarized for you there, in this nice little screen. So it's a great way to be able to sort of understand your eligibility and again, what that means. On this next slide, great, the loan sync. So, I think the most important thing that you can do with the Savvy tool right now and the service that we provide is we're going to be able to help you determine that loan type. Okay. And then we're going to be able to help you certify your employment. These are the two big things that are going to be key for borrowers trying to become eligible for this expansion waiver. So with this loan sync, it's really easy to do. You can select your loan servicer, let's say Navient in this case, enter in your Navient username and password credentials, and it's going to sync over a read-only snapshot of that loan data. It's not giving us access, but just a snapshot of what's going on. And this allows us to confirm things like your loan type. So if you have an older Fel loan, we will be able to see that there and flag that, and then help you to take the appropriate next action, which would be consolidation. So this is the sort of official way that we can confirm what types of loans you have so that we can, again, help you take the appropriate next step. After you've synced your loans, you are going to go to the next screen and you'll be prompted to start entering in your employment information. So we have a database of all of the public service loan forgiveness eligible employers in the country. Every school and school district there is in our database. So when you start typing in your employer, it should pop up from a drop-down menu if it is eligible, and you'll be able to select it. And then we will ask you sort of further questions to determine your eligibility. Things like, how many hours a week do you work? How long have you worked there, et cetera. This all helps us to sort of formulate an idea of that sort of employment eligibility. Now you can certify and enter in your information for your current employer, but we highly encourage you to also do it for any previous employment you might have had. So you can enter in, as many previous employers as you might have had, 3, 4, 5, your, sort of entire employment history. And what this allows us to do is to go back in time retroactively and help you to certify any previous employment that you might have had that could have been eligible for this program. And this is where it really gets tricky for so many borrowers who are trying to get sign off from, an HR official at a school, maybe it's out of state. It's, again, a process that feels like a full-time job trying to just manage all that paperwork. And that's where we take all of that on. We digitize the whole process. We reach out to your previous employers. We make sure that those forms get signed properly. and then they come back through us and we submit them on your behalf. So it eliminates all of this human error, all the back and forth that you might be dealing with on your own. And we're able to submit them quickly, accurately, and efficiently. And that's the key here to being able to take advantage of this right away. So after you've entered in your employment information, you're also able to access our expert support team. So if you have any questions at any point when you're going through the tool or when you log into your account, you can click on the support button and send our support team a message. They respond back usually within a few business days. You're able to request setting up a phone call. You can simply say, I'd like to talk to someone on the phone, and they'll be able to arrange that. We have an interactive help center with lots of articles that explain this new waiver and program. You can click on that as well. We have a telephone line, email address, whatever capacity you prefer. Here's what I want you to sort of walk away with knowing. There is help just a phone call away and someone who can be in your corner throughout this entire process. So, I think one of the biggest things for student loan borrowers is just feeling alone in this process. And that should not be the case after tonight. So on this next slide, I think, again, we're going to sort of show you this, the link to get to this site, which is neamb.com/buysavvy. And I will put that in the chat right now, /savvy. And that's where you can go ahead and get started and log into your member benefits account and access the Savvy tool and services. So with that being said, I think I will turn it over to Eric, or I'm not sure who I'm turning it over to, but I think we're going to try to take some questions.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute him. Let me put it in the chat. Robin Shell, you ask a great question, which is, how do I become an NEA member? So if you're an NEA member, you get free access to the Savvy support. I intended on putting the link in the chat, but I hit the answer live. So I'm going to actually put that the link to join NEA in the chat and not the Q&A. And then Elizabeth Adams, I know someone else, I did the answer live on accident, but I think it was a part-time one, which I'll answer. Elizabeth Adams asks, so if you work 6 years at a public university full-time as an ESP, and then a few years as a substitute teacher, am I there? The big question that I have, and again, Savvy can help you figure out your specific circumstance. So I highly recommend, going to neamb.com/savvy. But the question is whether you've worked full-time, which is defined as 30 hours 30 hours a week. So my hunch is that as a general matter, the substitute teaching isn't going to hit that 30-hour threshold. You might have been doing kind of extended substitute teaching, or a lot of it, in which case it would. So that's going to be the issue. And again, Savvy can help you figure out which one is going to be the full-time qualifying payments.
And Elizabeth, in case, let's say those few years as a substitute teacher aren't eligible because you weren't full-time, that's okay. You've got, it looks like probably 6 years working at a public university, which, should count as credits. And then, these past 2 years of non-payments under this payment pause, you might be eligible to get an additional 2 years of credits towards forgiveness. And so, you'd be closer than you think, but it doesn't have to be continuous, it doesn't have to be consecutive, these payments. So, if you have some periods of eligibility or employment that are not eligible, that's okay. You've just kind of got to get to 120 total and sort of, cumulative employment. So, if you've got periods, like I said, that aren't, that's okay. If you have to work a couple of years now, that, but you're pretty close as it is.
Yes, and then I'm going to answer a couple other questions, and then Dorothy or Jessica, if there's any questions that you're seeing over and over that you think are kind of popular or consistent questions, I welcome you pulling them out and asking Lindsay or me any of them. The one question I do want to address that I'm seeing over and over and I see frequently is, what about like deferments? What about defaults? And then what about the payment pause? And they all feel the same because you didn't make any payments, but they're treated differently. And so it can be a little confusing. And Lindsay just alluded to this. All of the payment pause since last, I guess it was April, right, Lindsay? Since last April, each of those months of the payment pause, they count as qualifying payments for public service loan forgiveness. So when we're saying 120, the truth is almost all of you should have, if you're in a federal loan and you were on that, all of those months. And as Lindsay said, we're now, whatever we're going to be at, 20 months, 21, 22 months. You're going to have 20 or 22 months. So then you're really trying to piece together 100 from before the payment pause at the beginning of the pandemic. So those non-payments count as payments.
I think it's 23 months actually, to be exact. We counted, Eric. Yeah, so that's about 2 years off of that 10 years. So you are about a fifth of the way closer to getting forgiveness without having made a payment at all. So that's significant.
So it kind of becomes a 8-year forgiveness program functionally based on how the last 2 years have operated. Now, other non-payment payments like forbearances and deferments, they do not count as qualifying payments. And it's a problem. We're fighting tooth and nail with the Department of Education now to count them for public service loan forgiveness. You may be someone, we know a lot of educators, when they go back to school, they get put into automatic deferments that you don't even ask for. We've had educators who say, take me back out of the deferment. I want to pay my loan. And then they get put back in, and then they don't count. So unfortunately, deferments and forbearances, those do not count as qualifying payments.
Also, Eric,
go ahead, Dorothy.
go ahead.
Sorry. And I know you did answer this, but just wanted to just confirm again. This only applies to if you've been working for 10 years.
You were breaking up. I think you're asking, does this apply? Say it again, Dorothy, you were breaking up. We couldn't hear you.
We've got a lot of questions that are just making sure that this can only work if they've been working for 10 or more years.
Okay, so I think what you're asking about is the 10 years. So let's just be clear about that. So the forgiveness, the way the public service loan forgiveness program is set up is it's like an all or nothing. It's like 10 years or bust. You get to 10 years, you get to 120 qualifying payments, and you meet the other requirements, you get all your federal student debt wiped out. If you're joining us tonight and you're on year 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, the most important thing you can do right now is make sure that you're on track and that you're set up now, that you're in the right loan, you're in the right repayment plan, that they're counting your payments. It is heartbreaking. Lindsay does this work all the time. We have a lot of our members and educators show up in year 10 and they say, I did it. I just paid my loans for 10 years and I worked my tail off and I served my community and I make difference in students' lives. I'm ready for my forgiveness. And especially before the overhaul, we had the unfortunate job of saying, well, you were in the wrong loan, or you didn't have the right repayment plan, or you didn't have the whatever technicality that we don't like. So what I really urge people to do who are not at 10 years, and I mean, maybe you think you're not going to be in 10 years, you don't know what your life is going to be like. So please, make sure you're on track. And then the other thing is these reforms are going to work for even people who have not worked 10 years yet, because you may be getting credit for payments that wouldn't be credited otherwise. So even if you're not going to get to the forgiveness yet, this overhaul could get you a lot closer. And you should make sure you take advantage of this time to do what you can to make sure that you're going to be eligible when you hit year 10.
Yeah, and to that point, this employment certification form, it's highly suggested by the Department of Education that borrowers submit that every year, every 12 months, or when they change jobs. And I can't emphasize how important that is to be able to track, and ensure your success to that 120. So it's not just one, employment certification at the end of 10 years. That's really risking it. But if you submit it, and this is what Savvy helps you to do, submit it every year, you are going to be tracking 12 credits over 12 credits, inching closer to that 120. And so when that 120 comes around, there's no question at all between you and your servicer that you're going to get the forgiveness you deserve. I can't tell you how many borrowers have struggled with their servicers not counting credits correctly when they've had to go back and cover a large period of time. And so, when you can do it frequently every year, that I think is the best way.
Yeah, and if I could add one more thing on this too. Our emphasis tonight is on the public service loan forgiveness overhaul, and for very good reason, because now if you have served 10 years, there is a path here to get out of your federal student debt. And before, a couple weeks ago, for too many of educators, that was not going to be the case. People were going to be saddled with student debt literally the rest of their lives. So that's why we're emphasizing this tonight. But if you're one of those people who's not quite there, Savvy is also really helpful to help you figure out the best repayment plan for you. Like, they're really good at figuring out, there's this other repayment plan that will lower your payments that will qualify for public service loan forgiveness. You should be in that one. And so they're really good, and they have been for years on this before these kind of changes, really good at helping NEA members get in the right repayment plan for them, both in terms of eligibility for forgiveness programs, but also in getting like manageable monthly payments. So they've saved our members like a bazillion dollars, millions of dollars, really, just getting you in the right repayment plan. So they can be really helpful in that regard as well.
Yep. And when you go through the tool, if you create your account, you'll see that repayment plan, estimating that is part of the process. So you'll easily be able to figure out what your lowest monthly payment could be, and get that all set up. And we submit those forms for you as well.
And so the big news we're talking about tonight is the public service loan forgiveness overhaul. But the news that's coming next, right, is that the federal student loan payments are going to resume in February. And so if you have federal student loans, you're going to start being required to be paying them again starting in February. And this is a really good time. It's now like almost November. Take advantage of this time now to like get yourself all set so that you're ready to resume payments in the most affordable way, and in the way that gets you, make sure that you're eligible for all the forgiveness opportunities that you may have.
Eric, I saw a question come through around Parent Plus loans. If I can answer this one out loud, that'd be helpful. So Lorraine asked about, having been sort of denied payments or eligible payments because of the wrong program, and asked, due to the new updates to the program, do they count for Parent Plus loans? So I want to be really clear about this because it's a great question. So Parent Plus loans in their current form as a Parent Plus loan are ineligible for public service loan forgiveness. They need to be consolidated, all right, in order to become eligible. So if you have a Parent Plus loan, you would need to consolidate that loan. And then from that point forward, you can start accumulating credits towards the 120 you need. Now, when it comes to this waiver, unfortunately, Parent Plus loans were not included in this sort of expansion of eligibility around your loan type. So while Fel Loans were included, and now you can get credits for when you had payments made as under a Fel Loan, unfortunately with Parent Plus loans, that's not the case. So again, you can still become eligible for public service loan forgiveness, but your eligibility would only start to accumulate after the point of consolidation. So no previous payments under those, while they were a Parent Plus loan can count. So hopefully that makes sense. But again, this is where Savvy can help you out, Lorraine, if you have any other questions.
And can I ask all of you a question? Can I make an ask of you? We are working really hard and we're just getting started. We have a year to educate as many people as we can about the opportunity to have their federal student debt forgiven this year if you've served your communities for more than 10 years. I urge you to tell your colleagues about this. Yeah, I went to this webinar, and there's news that this public service loan forgiveness program might actually work now, and we really do think this is real. And we're already, like I said, we're already working with people who are getting their loans forgiven as we speak. So if you have colleagues who have 10 years, who have been serving 10 years, and they still have federal student debt, you can share the webinar with them. Definitely make sure they're NEA members and encourage them to go to Savvy. We would, invite you to help us spread the word as widely as we can, because this is absolutely a life-changing opportunity for people. The average debt of of educators with 10 years of service and more is, you know, $60,000, $80,000, $100,000. And we've worked with people with a lot more, but they got this 1 year chance to wipe out their debt. And I don't want to be next November or next December. I don't think you want me talking to your colleagues either. Like, oh, if we did this a month ago, all that debt would be gone. So please tell people, spread the word. If nothing else, get the conversation started. We have a year so to educate people about that and get them through this somewhat complicated process. But we really invite you to spread the word as widely as you can, because it's real. And we're here to help. We want to figure out how to just shred debt. We're just in the mood to just tear up student debt this whole year, and we're eager to help you all.
There's another question that came through that might be helpful to answer out loud regarding from Cheryl regarding the payment pause and being told her loans didn't qualify for that. So if you were required to make payments for the past 2 years, there's sort of a couple of reasons why that might have been the case, but it really comes down to your loan type, and the types of loans that were not included under this COVID relief were private loans, and then they were also commercial Fel loans. So Cheryl, I have a feeling that you could have this commercial Fel loan, which basically there are about 6 million borrowers total who have this type of loan, but those loans, even though they were federal, were not eligible for the payment pause. So based on what you were telling me in this question, because they're Fel and because they were commercial as well, you weren't eligible for the payment pause, but you might have also been told you weren't eligible for public service loan forgiveness. So the good news for you is these commercial Fel loans are eligible under this waiver to potentially take advantage of past payments. So for someone like you, we would definitely want to help you look into your situation, because if you're saying, you know, you have over 120 payments, then, you know, that could be sort of instant forgiveness, you know, just by consolidating and getting you through that. So I'm going to put our support contact information in the chat so everyone has it, and encourage you to send us an email to set up a time to chat and review your situation if that would be helpful. Especially Cheryl, just based on what you've said, I'm eager to try to help you get that, because I think I know exactly what type of loan you might have.
Can I pick up one of the things that Cheryl mentioned? If you were told that you had the wrong loan and you were not eligible for forgiveness, if anybody told you that 2 weeks ago, it's old news. Ignore it. Get a second opinion, because those loans, those Fel loans that were not eligible for forgiveness just a couple of weeks ago, are now eligible for forgiveness. So even if you've been told that you don't have the right kind of loan or you're not in the right repayment plan, that stuff is out the window. And so we don't want you like trying to figure out your eligibility at all. We just want you reaching out to us, and we'll help you figure out your eligibility. But definitely know this: if you have federal student loans and you have worked for 10 years or more and you've made 120 payments, there's a very, very good chance that you're eligible for forgiveness. And so if you're in those buckets, like run, don't walk, to get to see if you're eligible for it. And I think Lindsay already said this, but just to put a fine point on it, if you had the Fel loan that was not eligible for the payment pause, that's a good indicator that you were in the wrong loan. That is a loan that is now eligible for forgiveness. Yeah, and that's so Cheryl had a Fel loan, and really this reform is all about really fixing, Cheryl, those of you who had Fel loans that are the old loans. You didn't do this, and in the previous rule was if you had a Fel loan, you weren't eligible, and you could become eligible if you consolidate into a direct loan, but your payments wouldn't start counting until the direct loan was consolidated and the payments started running from there. The new rule under the overhaul is that all of your payments count. Another group of borrowers, you might be a borrower who had payments that were counted, but you consolidated and the clock and the payments restarted. That's hurt a lot of people too. Again, that's being wiped out, where every payment, regardless of these kind of technicalities, is going to be counted. And yes, we are going to record these. And if you want someone to come talk on student debt to your local ESP chapter, just go ahead and contact the organizers. I don't know if Jessica or Dorothy, and we can try to get somebody to come speak to your chapter. We really are at this stage doing everything we can to get the word out, and people with PowerPoint will travel. We'll talk to whoever wants to hear about the good news that we have from many, many, many educators. So just to sum up, go to neamb.com/savvy to get individualized debt support, and go to nea.org/student-debt to keep up with student debt news. And we're going to keep this update. We're upgrading the website so that we can keep information coming out to people. But those are the two places to go for news you can use, and definitely the neamb.com/savvy site to get individualized support to determine if you're eligible, and if you are, to have someone shepherd you through the forgiveness process.
On behalf of the Center of Professional Excellence in Student Learning, I would like to thank our presenters for tonight's webinar presentation, and thank you all for your participation. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night from the NEA ESP Quality Department.